Hey guys, welcome back to Craftersations. So my family isn't up yet. It's a Sunday morning, so they could be waking up anytime. My youngest is usually an early riser. Sometimes he even beats me up, which is kind of insane given his age, but he does. So if you don't have your craft already out, maybe hit pause, go get your drink of choice, depending on what time of day it is for you. Grab a craft that doesn't maybe take a whole lot of time to set up. Come back and meet me. Let's have a chat. So I'll show you what I'm currently working on. So this is my next folded book. For my animal lovers out there, I have a craft fair coming up in March, so a little over a month away. It's kind of like middle of March, and it's my first craft fair of the season, so I'm of course trying to build my inventory back up from the holidays because I'm very fortunate. The holidays were pretty good to me, and I gotta have stuff to put on market. Oh, the one that I was working on last time, let me grab it. Which one was it? Might have been this one. This was one of my photo frames. So again, another little clippy there. And then I did one more since we talked last. Got that guy. So it's kind of on a horizontal kick. So back to verticals. All right, well, what should we chat about today? So I saw an interesting post. I think it was in one of my crafting Facebook groups. I'm in a group called Crafteologies, if anyone's interested. It's a, I don't know what's called, a splinter group, but it's connected with the Ologies Facebook group, which is connected to the Ologies podcast by Ali Ward, which I also highly recommend if you like cool science information. Anyway, so we're Ologites who also happen to craft, brings us all together. So anyway, this post was about crafts that are essentially on like an endangered species list. So kind of like the IUCN does the actual endangered species list. This was like an endangered species list, but for old school crafting. And I was reading through this list, and it was just page after page, which, makes sense. Technology comes along, takes the place of manual labor. There's certain things that we used to have to do by hand because we didn't have a choice, and machines and just, improvements have made those skills essentially unnecessary. But it was basically talking about how, if you're a master of one of these crafts, that essentially there's so few experts left for those crafts that there's very little hope of them successfully being passed on at the level at which they would still be done with any type of competency. So if you are a master of these crafts, maybe consider passing along, finding a way to continue that knowledge. Now, as a biologist, I get that things go extinct. It's actually part of the natural process. Nothing is guaranteed to live forever, especially if it's not beneficial in some way, if it doesn't have some kind of characteristic advantage that allows it to continue to thrive in the current conditions. And crafts and skills are no different. I think we feel emotional connection to them, especially if we do them, or if we remember them, we're like, oh, it's that fear of change. We don't want things to go away or disappear that we're familiar with. So I get that some of these crafts are probably not going to continue. There's plenty of skills and crafts from hundreds, thousands of years ago that, do we miss them? probably not, because we never even knew they were there. And if we did, there might be some kind of thrill in picking them back up again, not because we need them, but just because it's something challenging and new. But anyway, so some of these crafts are going to fall by the wayside, and that's not necessarily a tragedy. That's just life, you know? That's just change. Everything is changing. But it got me thinking, you know, where my crafts came from, and have I done anything to help the continuation of the crafts that I love? So I thought maybe that's where my conversation would go today. And maybe as I talk, you can think about, you know, where did your crafting come from? Is it a family history? Is it something you saw in a video on the internet and you're like, I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna pick that up and do that. So anyway, so the original craft that I remember being taught was crochet, and I learned it from my mother. I was pretty little. I don't even know if I was in double digits when she first introduced me to crochet. And if I remember correctly, she learned it from her, if not grandmother, possibly even great-grandmother. So it's been passed down, you know, and crochet is one of those where it was an essential skill. You made daily use objects with crochet. And crochet is unique because it can't be done by machine. Knitting can be done by machine because it's looping. Crochet is basically knot tying with a hook. And to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you know different, please let me know. I don't believe crochet has been mimicked by machines yet. So if you see a crochet piece, it was done by hand by someone somewhere. So anyway, so this has been passed down through my mom's side to me. And for the first blanket I made, which I believe is one that I gave to my cousin, it was not supposed to be vase shaped. It was supposed to be a rectangle. It ended up being vase shaped. But you know, I made it and I gifted it to him with love. No idea if he still has it. But crochet has continued with me up to now. I still crochet, usually things for myself, because it takes so long to do crochet. You generally don't get your money back out of it. You just know that the enjoyment you got from it was part of your payment. So most of my crochet I do for myself now. But yeah, so I got that from my mother, and she still crochets as well. So it's, you know, it's cool. And that's one I haven't passed on to anybody yet. I have 2 sons, and not that guys can't crochet. I know it's actually become more popular now with guys crocheting. But neither of my boys have expressed interest. They've enjoyed the products of my crochet. They both have, you know, crochet blankets. I made crocheted sweaters for them at various times, beanies, mittens. So they've benefited. And I've collected those things back up as they've outgrown them and figure, you know, when grandkids come along, then maybe they'll become heirlooms. We'll see. But, you know, maybe at some point there will be significant others that might want to learn, or there might be grandchildren at some point, thinking so far down the line, that might want to learn. But yeah, so that's crochet. And then another craft that I do that I love is cross stitch, which I learned from my aunt, my mother's sister. And my aunt is a phenomenal cross stitcher. She does her own designs. I remember one time she took my father's business card and she basically blew it up. It's like poster sized, and cross stitched it to recreate his business card for him. Just amazing. So yeah, she's very talented. So she passed that on to me when I think I was in my double digits at that point, like maybe 10, 11, 12-ish. I found that I really loved it. Now, but notice both my crafts are kind of meticulous. They're pattern driven. That might give you a clue as to a little bit about my personality. Anyway, so cross stitching I got from my aunt, and I'm actually not sure where she picked it up from. I'd have to ask her, or maybe if she watches this video, she'll drop it in the comment, and let me know where where cross stitching originated. But that's another one that I really haven't had a chance to pass on. So not that these are endangered crafts, right? Cross stitch, crochet. These are everywhere right now. Super, super popular. Not in any danger of going anywhere. And cross stitch is, again, another one I do primarily for myself, just because the designs that I tend to like to do, I like the more detailed ones that are more challenging. And yeah, I would just, the time involved is huge. And unless you're a crafter, you tend to not appreciate. In fact, it's funny, at craft fairs, I always know who the crafters are, because they comment on, oh my gosh, that's such a small count, referring to the 8 o'clock count, like 28, I like 28 count, right, because I'm crazy. And they'll tell me, girl, your stuff is underpriced. Like, I know how long it takes to do this kind of stuff. You're not charging enough. So I know who my crafters are, because they understand. If you've never made anything by hand, I don't want to say it's impossible to appreciate the effort involved, but I think it's a lot harder to understand the sheer amount of time that goes in to do some of these crafts. Okay, it's not a machine cutting it out. It's everything by hand. So, crochet, cross stitch, and then the book folding is my most recent endeavor. And that one, it also goes back to my aunt. She was the first one who made a folded book, which is what I'm working on right now. She had made one for my mother as a gift, and I saw it, and I was just blown away. I could not, my brain could not wrap around how on earth you carved a design into the forage of the book pages. You know, I thought, was it like viced together and you had like a laser or a Dremel or something that you cut down into the pages? I thought for sure it was going to be something like that. And so I didn't learn this from her. She's living out of state. We're in different states, so that wasn't necessarily an option. But, YouTube, go figure. You found me on YouTube, and I found this craft. I found tutorials and Facebook groups as well. So I looked, I don't think I even knew what to call it at the time. I'm not even sure how I found it. But found tutorials on YouTube, found some free patterns on Facebook. Bless the people who put tutorials out there and free patterns out there. So for those of us that are just getting started, we don't have to worry about this huge investment just to try it out and see. And found a simple pattern that I liked and dove in and just fell in love with it. And it wasn't like anything like I expected. I mean, it's done one page at a time, right? So each page is basically marked with a ruler, and then you cut, well, for the cut and fold, there's a few different techniques. There's one where it's only folding. It's 2 marks per page and you just fold the corners in. But for this style, the cut and fold, you cut tabs essentially out of the edge of the page, and then how you fold the tabs down is what builds the image. It's like kind of like how a 3D printer lays a layer down at a time. Well, in this case, the pages are your layers, and the way you cut that page adjusts the layer at that point in the final design until you get, something that looks like this. So way more meticulous than how I had envisioned it. And in fact, at craft fairs, I make sure to be working on a project at the back of the booth. And then I have signs, come back and see how it's done. Because most people, like me, assume that there's some way to do it in bulk, to do multiple pages at a time. Most of them, and especially it's funny, men assume that there's a tool that I'm using. It's a laser cut or something. And so when they see that I'm doing it page by page, they're usually ones that go, whoa, there's no faster way to do it. And I'm like, not that I've discovered. So yeah, it's literally done page by page. So anyway, this as far as I know, like, crochet is obviously a very, very old craft. Like, I don't even know how many hundreds of years it goes back. Cross stitch, I don't know if cross stitch is as old as crochet. My guess is that needlepoint and tatting and embroidery would be older than cross stitch, because cross stitch requires the gridded fabric, whereas like embroidery wouldn't. Now I don't know if you're a craft historian, please correct me, educate me, let me know where I'm misspeaking. Book folding, as far as I know, is relatively recent. I mean, it might even be able to date back to just the last decade or two. I really don't know. I do have a sense that it started somewhere in Europe, because that's where a lot of the programs come from that are used to make the patterns. And that's where a lot of like the tutorial videos, the original ones that I saw, seem to be based out of Europe, specifically like Britain. So it's relatively new. This is the only one, though, that I've actually had an opportunity to pass on. So I've had a customer or two come over or come to me so I could walk them through, you know, basically how you set the book up, how you work through the pattern, the pages. So this one I have continued on. But anyway, so that's a little bit about the crafts that I do and where they came from, for me anyway, not like their historical history, but my history with them, and basically how my family has contributed to my crafting. And, you know, maybe we'll keep these ones off the endangered crafting list. So what crafts do you do? Are your crafts in danger of going extinct? And if so, what can we do to keep them alive if we feel that they're worthy of staying alive? So thank you for sticking around for this Craftersation. I hope you got a little bit of crafting done, or if not, maybe just an excuse to sit and chat for a while. So until next time, happy crafting. Bye, guys.